Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the weekly kickoff. All right, now, key theme coming out of last week, which is sort of running into this week. It's the whole bit of a tariff blow up with the EU and the US, right? EU coming back and saying, you know what, we're not negotiating. And Trump's just going back to his standard playbook. Okay, well, let's start with 50% tariffs and then work it back from there, right? So we'll see how that plays out. But I tell you what, there's no US dollar safe haven now, right? If anything, there's a flight out of the US dollars, and that's sort of really unsettling things. Now, as we come into the week, we do have there's a couple of key releases, and I'll come into that in a second. But Nvidia earnings come out on Wednesday, right? Now, Nvidia has had outrageous growth, right, in the AI space and all the AI chips and all these sorts of things. So this is going to bring up the Chinese deal somewhat as well. Now, Nvidia in the report, they were looking at a 5.5 billion in charges, right? Nvidia, and the shares goes absolutely hammered. That's that day everything was down about 12%. Well, 5%, 5%, 5%. You know what I mean? It's like, and then it all bounced back in one day once there was a deal. So this is a major, as I said, sentiment stock that could have a huge influence on what the indices do on Wednesday, right? And if you come through and read the story, right, it's the last of the Magnificent Seven, right? The big tech firms that are dominating the tech space, right? Or actually even shareholdings. Huge money in this space. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens and I'd say the tariffs and all those sorts of things with the stop-start situation. I don't think there's going to be much impact on their earnings at this point, right? But it's about the future earnings. So they might get a good report, stocks go up and then get hit. But we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, as you come into the start of the week, just be aware, right? US holiday, and I've just put a line through that as well. UK spring holiday, right? So we do have the markets should be pretty quiet, North America and Europe as we come into the start of the week. So factor that into your trading, right? Because you don't want to be sort of getting in front of the markets trying to pick things off when, you know what, there's not a lot of activity going through the market. But things will change, right? They'll pick up Tuesday. Now, just coming into the markets, right? We've got the dollar heading south, right? And it's no surprise we're seeing a little bit of a pullback across the board here on a number of instruments. Euro not really pulling back. Sterling did, but it's making its way back up. And there's a couple of surprise packets here, right? Aussie and Kiwi finally picking themselves up off the floor and breaking out of the doldrums, out of those recent ranges. Dollar CAD, oils have been all over the place as well, but the dollar really sort of capitulating there, and the CAD sort of rallying, right? So that goes with what we're looking for is the commodity currencies, Aussie, Kiwi, and CAD, right? These three instruments are heavily correlated with the commodities. So, and we are seeing the commodities doing much better, right? The safe havens here, like after Friday, they were all powering along. Now they're getting drilled, right? So that's a little bit of an exodus. And we're seeing this quite a lot, right? Especially around as the Don wields his tariff authority, right? You come into these news stories, and this is the disruptor, right? The disruptor in the markets at the moment. And if you want to look at some stories here, like tariff fogged markets leave investors flying blind, right? Everyone's trying to work out, we thought we'd had everything done, right? China and the US came to the table. I know there's a 90-day sort of moratorium on implementing the tariffs and these sorts of things. And we thought everything else was fine. Then the EU sparks up. So it's creating a little bit of unsettled sort of behavior in the markets. Now, let's just put together where we can focus on making some cash out of this week, right? And there's a lot of good things that are coming out. Now, on Tuesday, we have US durable goods. Now, historically, this is a really good number. And this is one number that is going to get impacted by the Trump tariffs. I still think it's too early to be impacting, right, dramatically because of all the stop starts. You don't even know when the tariffs are really on or off. But it's worth having a look to see if there is any impact because that will impact the US dollar directly, okay? And when you look at the currencies in the zone, we do have a lot of the major pairs here, all coming out with very clear direction. But right now, they are all overcooked in the opposite direction, right? So as you come into the Asian session, I'll be sort of just sitting back, waiting to see what's going on, right? Because, the timing of the trade is most important. So if you go through the live trade signals, right, just update the page, you'll see the majors there. Left out the Kiwi, Sterling Yen, Aussie Kiwi. The guys have got our dollar Swiss in there too. It is actually missing in action. Now this week, the live sessions, right? The core components here, US durable goods, right? Give us a good look into the tariffs. As I said, I think it might be a little bit early, but we'll wait and see. And then on Thursday, 7 a.m. London time, we will be going through using all features of Primetime Pro. Now, I've sort of been using it a little bit, I wouldn't say casually, but you know what? There's a couple of safety mechanisms in there to allow us to let the trades run, right? And I'll run through that because it's going to be a good one. Because if we see trending markets, right, at any sort of stage, we want to be getting Primetime Pro into action. And the best thing to do is put it into play, but with safety mechanisms. Like if momentum crosses over mid-range, you know what? Let's trim the position. These sorts of things, right? It's going to give us some really good insight into what's going on there. Now, let's just come into the economic calendar because you know what? You go through the week. There's a lot of opportunities here. Last week of the month, right? So you come into Tuesday. Okay, there's durable goods is the key feature there for me on Tuesday. You come into Wednesday. Okay, a lot of bond auctions. You'll be looking at those closely. We've got Aussie CPI numbers. Okay, this is the monthly indicator. Gives us a good look at various aspects. We've got some producer prices, some numbers out of the EU, right? Don't forget, coming into Wednesday, we are going to be looking or keeping a very close eye on the stock market with NVIDIA's share earnings coming out. You do have the unemployment change there out of the Eurozone as well. Not quite as important as the German numbers, but you know what? You take what you can get. And then heading into Thursday, it's not like we're looking for the red highlighted activity, right? So we got the second estimate for the GDP for the US. You know what? Still, I don't think GDP is a thing just yet. Inflation, employment, these sorts of things. GDP really comes into play when when inflation and these things aren't moving. You got the weekly jobless claims, and then we come into Friday, right? We're almost at the start of a new month. We'll get the non-farm payrolls, etc., next week. But Friday, you've got some crude numbers, some more numbers there out of Japan, and you know what? And Japan is actually sort of firing, right? So Japan Friday, we've got some Aussie private sector numbers. These aren't like massive. Housing credit would be big, and then you got retail sales figures there out of the Eurozone once again. And this is sort of all relevant, right? Because the CPI numbers, which come in over the course of the day, right, for all the German states there. So we'll see what that works out because Europe is in the firing line with the tariffs. That whole situation. They're not looking to play ball at all. And then you got the PCE price index numbers there, really to give us a good look at what's going on. Like personal income, there's a whole bunch of numbers sort of coming out. We should have a pretty good idea of what the dollar's doing, how it's impacted by the NVIDIA release, earnings report, and trying to connect the dots, right? So all we're looking for are opportunities to get into these currencies. Now, whether we're looking at a long-term sort of setup, right, which is, I'm telling you, they're valuable, but you know what? It takes, this is it, like Euro, just as an example, is going up. Long-term, it's overbought. We're probably about 2 weeks away from getting into that opportunity, right? Because the longer term time frame of momentum is it's like a snail's pace, right? But when it gets there, you don't want to get sort of scared and balk away. We want to get into the trade. I can see some massive US dollar weakness here coming into for the rest of the year, right? Situation with the EU, like the EU, there's a lot of countries there, right? They got a bit of pull, right? Trump is saying, you know what, a lot of the stuff they've got, we don't need anyway. But you know what? That's not where investors put their money. So we'll see how that plays out. Nvidia, as I said, is a key focus. Monday we have got a holiday, so don't get yourself all excited and think, sterling and the dollar are going to be sort of cranking up, because we do have holidays for those sort of dates. And I actually clicked on the wrong one there, but so just keep that in your plan, right? Because if you're going into trading sterling or even looking at the major pairs on Monday, right, it may be a bit, you may be sitting there for a while because nothing's really happening. If anything, just take the time, redraw your trend lines. Like Aussie and Kiwi have got some new levels here. And you can see the price action last week was a little bit erratic. For me, I was a little bit pissed off because I did get long. Actually, if I just come back to I am on the hourly charts. I mean, I did get long euro looking for a move to the top side, had ample time to close out the position and then think again because it did stall. But you know what? And then it's higher. You think, how can I do that better? All I need is one of these trades and I pick up 10 grand, right? So that's what you've got to be thinking about. And that's all our focus is, right? Looking for trading opportunities around those key levels. And that's, if we can sort of nail one or two of those, then we are going to be cleaning up, right? So don't forget the trade zone, jump in there. That's where you're going to find out a lot more information about what's going on with the traders and trading in general. And let's put it together, hit some of these trades out of the park. Aussie and Kiwi, I think I just haven't been involved in these pairs for a while because they've just had no uniformity or direction. They are catching up with their big sort of brothers, euro and sterling. So there could be a lot of potential here, right? Higher Aussie CPI numbers definitely supports a stronger Aussie, and that should send us topside, right? We can isolate the best potential opportunities. At the moment, it may be a little bit, shorter term than normal because of, the comments that will be coming out of the EU and the US. Don't forget, we're going to have a bit more shock and awe from Trump. So put that into your trade brain. And as we get closer to Wednesday, you be sure as hell Nvidia earnings are going to be a big interest, right? Because they are, as I said, a sentiment indicator. Nasdaq is going to be in the firing line at the moment. We've got like a bit of a risk on profile, but don't forget, since the US debt downgrading, right, the connection between the bonds, the equity markets, and the currencies is all independent now, right? So don't think, we're going to have these clear risk on, risk off days. We've got the US government trying to work out what they're going to do with their tax bill. Equities, they're going to be looking at Nvidia, and the US dollar, maybe a bit more about the EU tariff situation, right? So a little bit twisty turny. So all we need to do is pick off things in specific setups, right? And before you run into the safe haven trade, just be aware it is not looking good for the safe havens just at the moment. So a bit of an unwind of the initial panic that came through on Friday with regards to the EU and the tariff deal there. Okay, so a fair bit to unpack, lots of opportunities. We are probably looking at, like microcosms to get into the trades, take some cash out of the market. It's the last week of the month. Most of the big data is out on the table. So don't get all excited and pumped up. Let's just be astute, get our trade brain on and start to pick some of these instruments off and let's tuck some cash away, right? All right, guys, have a good week. All the best. Cheerio.